just say the banks to finance those projects will not work unless...
Okay, good morning to everyone and a very warm welcome here. We're very happy to be here together today. You're represented from VITO, the Flemish and Belgian research organization on sustainable technology, and also together with Enable, who is the Belgian development agency. And so we want to discuss today about the steep challenges that we have to come to a neutral carbon economy and society in the coming years, but also focusing on how we can do this in a good balance with the Global South. So this is really of key importance, and that is also why we're very happy to show here some cases and also to discuss what is needed to bring the different stakeholders together and to enable that transition. Where we see that it's very important also to imply the local governments and the local societies and communities to make sure that we also can enable this global transition. So I'm very happy here to invite also and to have present our Minister of Energy, Federal Minister of Energy, Her Excellency Mrs. van der Straten, also a representative of the African Union and who is represented today by the Executive Director Rachid El Abdoulaye from the AFREC. It's difficult, the noise, but I hope it's working. Can you understand? Yeah? Okay. Then we have Mr. Guanchen Zi, the VP Infrastructure and Energy from the World Bank. And we have also Mr. Jean van Wetter, who is the Managing Director of Enable. As we have some time constraints, I will first leave the floor to Mr. van der Straten. She has to leave us for another panel afterwards, but we will continue discussion, first representing the voice of the different players, and then having a panel debate for which I'm looking forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Inge, for your kind introduction. I'm going to speak a little bit loud. For those of us who have not been the first time at COP, know it's always the same challenges with noise and time constraints and everything else. But that being said, dear Madam Chair, dear Vice President also, I was going to say Madam Commissioner, but the representative for the African Union, dear ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. It is an honor for me to be here from two perspectives, because I can speak about energy, which is in my portfolio, but also I can speak about Africa. And Belgium, of course, holds a long history in working together with Africa. And the African perspective is something that we bring continuously when we speak about energy, for example, within the International Energy Agency. It's also a privilege to stand here, and this is my first event at COP28. Because today we can collectively embark on a transformative journey towards a sustainable and also a resilient energy future for the African continent. In the spirit of progress and innovation, our gathering mirrors the urgency and also the commitments embedded in the International Energy Agency's Net Zero Roadmap. And the roadmap charts a course towards a decarbonized global energy system by 2050. And today, we stand on the precipice of unprecedented opportunities and also challenges. And African nations, they do hold a pivotal role in shaping the energy landscape for our entire world. For Africa first, of course, because energy access to all is still a huge challenge in Europe. But this can be also a stepping stone to help also other countries across the entire world and also in Europe to provide us with other energy solutions, like, for example, green hydrogen. And that needs us to engage in a constructive dialogue, fostering collaboration and harnessing the power of innovation to propel Africa towards a net zero future that leaves no one behind. And addressing these challenges demands a global commitment to transformative action and requires an inclusive approach, which cannot be achieved without including the clean energy potential of Africa. And in this regard, access to affordable, reliable and quality qualitative energy supply is vital to the economic development of any country. It drives industrialization, boosts productivity and economic growth, and spurs human development and health, and is crucial to achieve almost all of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And Africa's ongoing challenges with access to energy must therefore be addressed for the continent to achieve a fair and just transition to clean energy. Of course, the energy transition is not without its challenges. We see barriers, including finance, regulatory frameworks, technological capacity. But however, I'm absolutely convinced that with concerted efforts and international support, these obstacles can be overcome. And we already have good examples on the ground. There is, for example, a very good collaboration between Namibia and Belgium with regard to energy. It's a green hydrogen project. But the first and foremost objective of the project is to provide clean energy access within Namibia. And then second, we work together to also export excess capacity through the form of ammonia to Europe, to Belgium, to provide our industries with a clean energy source. It's this inclusive approach that we need. Africa is a huge and an important continent. It's not only about wind and power and green hydrogen, but also with regard to the critical minerals, the materials that we need in the energy transition. And this is today also a conversation that we need to have more with Africa, and also with an inclusive approach. This was one of the issues that we addressed within IEA a few weeks ago, a few months already, and maybe, and I take this as something for myself also, Africa was not enough represented around the table. This was one of the remarks that the High Commissioner, Amani Abu Zaid, was making, that she was not seeing enough representatives of Africa around the table. And this, when we talk about a net zero approach for both Africa, for the entire world, we need to be more inclusive also in the voices that we represent. And for us in Belgium, it's a very important step. It's also within our core policies, and specifically with Enable, is something that is very important, and that we bring to the international agenda every time. It's this expertise and also the support that is provided by Enable, but also by International Energy Agency, that is very indispensable, and that will ensure that the requisite skills are developed and accessible to effectively address the multifaceted aspects of our shared environmental responsibilities. Today, here at the beginning, first week at COP28, it's only the beginning, and the Energy Days are in the beginning. And there are so many programs on energy at COP, more and more every year, because we know that the energy solutions are also solutions to the, not only to the climate crisis, but also to the energy crisis. But of course, all eyes are here on the COP presidency and to the COP declaration and the global stocktake. And we all know what the global stocktake will tell us, that we will not reach 1.5 and that we need to accelerate. And I really hope that we can find a common approach on tripling renewable energy capacities, on doubling energy efficiency, and phasing out fossil fuels. I count on the African voice to support this. It's the most effective way forward to reach 1.5 degrees Celsius. And you can count on us, on our Belgian expertise with regard to wind, with regard to solar, with regard to hydrogen, to embark on this journey together. I have to leave, unfortunately, for the EU Energy Days, but I'm looking forward to the conclusions of this panel that I count on you, Jean, to share it with me in the upcoming days. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your nice words. And good luck with the next discussions, I would say. Don't forget about technology, the importance of technology and development as well, I think. That is really needed also to take the steps forward. Maybe it's the good moment then to make an introduction of the different organizations. Maybe starting with you, if you can maybe represent, I don't know if it's possible, I do think so, a little bit the point of view of the African Union. Might be very important to see how you see the global challenges that we have, how to imply then also the African point of view and how we can work along this pathway.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting African Union. I'm sitting here representing Dr. Amani Bozet, Commissioner of Infrastructure and Energy. And of course, the topic really, all of us here gathering today, we know that the energy globally in the crossroads, and really there are a lot of decisions need to be made, and some decision is very tough decision. It is affect life of people, and this decision may change the landscape of the energy in general, and also the supply chain and whatever. And with the decision of triple renewable energy and double renewable energy efficiency, I think we need new skills to be in place. We need new financing mechanism to be also created, and also we need research and innovations to give a solution for the people. And Africa is not exceptional. We need all this. We need new skills that serve the needs. We need new finance. And of course, you are well aware about how the discussion about the African leader, how to structure the global financing mechanism to be favorable for African continent to attract more investment. And Africa is also, it is very special in terms of energy. We are talking about the continent that 50% of the population without access to electricity, 900 without access to the clean cooking facility. And this really is more challenging than other regions. And for that reason, we think Africa, they need to do more than others. And for that, I think collaboration is very, very important. We come together to have that research and innovation, to have that skills that needed, to have the financing that favorable for Africa. And when we talk also about Africa, we are not talking about today. We know Africa now is representing 20% of the African population or the global population. By 2050, Africa will become 2.5 billion people. By 2500, Africa will be 40% of the global population. What does it mean? Does it mean there is no transition without enable Africa to have that transition? And actually, this is articulated very clearly in the Africa position on energy access and energy transition. We believe that Africa, they need to use their own resources that are available now to make that transition, because for us, access, it is more important. We need to fill that gap of the access so that we can be in the same stage of the other continent for the energy transition. And I think collaborations and knowledge transfers, skills in all dimensions from all technology for all level, it is very urgent and needed in African context. I think this is what I can share it now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Guanji Chen, can you please also give your point of view on the World Bank on the development?
Okay, can you hear me, right? In terms of energy access challenge in Africa, I think my colleague already mentioned, I think we all know that it's unacceptable, right? In 21st century, you still have 600 million people that have no access to energy. That recognition is there, and how to fill that gap. In fact, the goal is to reach that by 2030. That's under SDG 7. Now, to do that, we have 7 years ago. Essentially, we have to triple the current level of progress if we want to really fill that by 2030. That requires investments, of course, but it's also not just investment. It's also about how to spend the resources much better, but how to build the capacity, how to build the skills. I think that's what this session is about. Now, from the World Bank's perspective, of course, we provide financing. We provide concessional financing to leverage more financing for Africa region. In the energy sector, we estimated we need hundreds of billions of dollars investment for the energy access to fill the gap. Now, that investment is not going to be just from the public sector, not from the MDB alone. We have to leverage. In fact, we estimate 2/3 of that has to come from the private sector. But that also means that we need to build institutions in the Africa region so that they have the capacity to attract investment that are coming to the region. And that itself is a very big challenge, because if we maintain a database looking at the power utilities in Sub-Saharan Africa region, 40% of them don't recover their operating and maintenance costs. So if you cannot run a utility financially sustainably, nobody's going to invest. That's why we need to work together and help them build this capacity to be attracted. Now, we all know that for Africa region to fill the access gap, they can leapfrog in the sense that they don't have to go through the traditional fossil fuel sort of a base energy system, because the technology has evolved over the last several decades. We can do many so-called distributed renewable energy mini-grids to access remote area much cheaper. And the solar, unit cost of solars and wind has come down dramatically over the last several decades. So we can really live for. But when you invest in renewable energies, it's not just about solar panels, it's not just about wind farm, but also about energy storage. And that's where the research work, in fact, we partner with your organization, VITO, and supported by NABLE in some of the countries, has borne fruit. The World Bank is a financial institution, but we don't just do finance. We also focus a lot on knowledge, on the battery storage. In fact, I was going to share with you, just last week, we launched a report called Unlocking Energy Transition. It's basically a toolkit, a guideline for planning solar plus storage projects. For those who are interested, I don't have a copy here, but we can save paper. You can scan this one here later on today. That's just come out. This is based on the work that we have done along with partners like VITO over the last a decade or so, because we have been actually funding battery storage system in African continent. We invest over $1 billion. I think we estimated so far we provided something like 6 gigawatt hours of battery storage, and another 4 gigawatt hours is under planning. So because we consider this is a very important part of this energy transition program. And that's just one aspect, battery storage. The Honorable Minister talking about sort of the other forward-leaning technology like green hydrogens. She mentioned about the work your government, your institution is working with Namibia. That's also another partnership that we help develop. We call it Hydrogen for Development Partnership. And some of you probably know about it. And we have just, in fact, yesterday we launched a report about financing for green hydrogen. And this is another sort of knowledge product that we can combine the ideas and your research capacities and build those together to basically help countries in Africa region to take advantage of their resources and to live for of their energy transition and energy access agenda. The minister also mentioned, which is also another thing very critical, right? All the things that we talk about energy transition, battery storage, they need critical minerals because they cannot depend on sands and clays. They require those really critical, very important critical minerals, lithiums and copras, and we all know that. Now, we all know also over the last 20 years, the supply chain of these critical minerals has been very concentrated. It's just a reality because a few countries has a huge demand and they have the capacity to help the extract and also the processing. But we really want the source countries, most of them are in Africa region, to benefit more from the resources they have. But that, again, require planning, require infrastructure investment, because, for example, in DRCs, only 25% of the people have access to electricity. If you want them to benefit more from the copper, then they need to double, triple their energy capacity first before they can actually benefit from this kind of supply chain. So those are another kind of upstream work that we need to do, and we are working on that as well. I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the strong partnership that we have with WITO. I think WITO has been a strong partnership with our SMAP program. SMAP program, for those of you who work in the field, you probably will, it's been in existence for 40 years. Hosted in the World Bank is a trust fund, but we're really supporting developing countries to build knowledge, to do upstream sort of project developments, and battery storage is one such initiative. And we also reach out to also research organizations in the continent, for example, the CSIR based in South Africa, which have the capacity to do it because we really want to tap into the capacity in the region. And I'm really happy to see WITO also form a partnership with CSIR, which is supported by SMAP for this kind of knowledge work moving forward. So let me stop here. I'll come back to answer other questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much for these insights. Thank you. Mr. Van Wetter, can you also explain a little bit how you see the role of Inabel and what you're doing today in this whole setting?
Yeah, but first of all, can you hear me? Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for this panel. I think we need to be together, and I think having here the African Union, the World Bank, a research institution, and Enable, it's a good start. As you mentioned, the challenges are huge, growing population, but already know only 50% have access to electricity, but population will triple. On the same time, we know that Africa cannot use the same energy we used ourselves for our own development, so we need to reinvent the whole model. And I think it's a unique opportunity, not only for Africa, but also for Europe, to think about what will be the energy access of the future. And what I like about the challenge we face, when you are faced in front of a huge challenge, you are obliged to innovate and to reinvent yourself. And at Enable is what we try to do. So we revised our model of development cooperation 3 years ago, changing it completely and moving away from, I would say, a north to south development model towards what I would call a common investment for our common future. And the way we conceive and design projects are in this spirit. So we would look at partnerships, a wide variety of partnership with, of course, African institutions, but also European ones, and try to see actually how we can connect the dots between actors to have an impact. And a good example of that is the green hydrogen story that the minister mentioned, that you mentioned as well. Europe needs green hydrogen for its own development and its own transition. Belgium is positioning itself as a hub in Europe for green hydrogen. To produce green hydrogen, you need a lot of renewable energy, which you find in Africa, and the minister mentioned Namibia. But the risk is that if Europe goes to those countries to produce green hydrogen only for export to Europe reasons, we would be accused of grabbing, as we did when it was minerals and other critical materials. So you cannot do that without a strong local development project. And that's where we intervene to make sure that the green hydrogen production in Namibia and in other countries benefit first the local population and the green industrialization of the country before benefiting the export needs in Europe. And that's very important, because if we don't do that, I think we would fail and we would lose the trust. Then it's how you do that. You mentioned, and I agree with you, governance is a huge issue. You need strong regulations in the country. So at Enable, we work on those. So my colleague Adrian there is based, for example, at the Ministry of Finance of Mozambique, advising Mozambique on their regulations to attract climate finance. That's an example. We work on education, vocational training. If you want people to have the skills to produce green hydrogen, you need to make sure that they are trained. Otherwise, what will happen, companies will hire Filipino, Chinese, Indian workers to the countries, and you don't benefit the local population. Then you need local content. SMEs, the good example of Namibia, I know the company investing there, the Belgian company, currently they would hire a South African company, not a Namibian one. So you need Namibian companies to have the skills and to know contractualization so that they can access those markets. Huge issue for the World Bank as well, because the contracting regulations are so strict that many firms cannot access those. So if you want them to access, they need coaching so they can understand the mechanism and also have the share in the project. And that's what we do at Enable, providing this coaching, providing this capacity building to make sure that there is transfer of know-how and local ownership to participate in those global energy projects. I will say more later, but as an introduction, I think is enough.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe also to add this perspective of FTO, we are a Flemish research organization, but really focused also on how we can bring science and technology to the people. We do this all together in partnerships. It's very important, and I think this is also showing where we are today here. And we really try to contribute in 3 impact domains, and that's also first of all at the European level, but also, and I think it's very important also that we also can make it also and leverage it at the global level, and that's where we also working together, I think, also in the African continent, which is very important that we can also develop our technology and also translate it to the local needs. But on the other hand, also learn from what are the local applications there, and also we can also make a win-win situation. I think that's very important, that we also are looking at, okay, how we can both profit at European level, but also African level and globally on all the things that we can do together. And that's really both in the energy sector, but also if we look at materials and also the bioeconomy, what we can do. So what we try to do is really to work on 3 impact domains. So first of all, there is the sustainable resource economy, where we want to contribute, and there are elements that we already addressed, like how to go along with the critical materials that we're looking for, and how can also we can leverage them. In there's always an energy factor and also competition, and it's very important, I think, as well, to see on how we can also find a balance between the needs that we have for our different biofuels and biomass, based really on the needs of industry on the one hand, but also on energy. And if you look at the African continent, it's also something we need to see, like, okay, how can we make use of the different critical materials that we have? How can we best exploit them? But on the other hand, also what kind of energy is needed to get there, and how can we also find a good balance, and also then enabling the different communities to help also to be able to extract them and to do it in a good way. Secondly, we're working a lot also in everything that's related to climate adaptation and mitigation. Of course, energy is key if we talk about the climate mitigation, and we'll come back to that in a few seconds, where indeed we're working a lot on the different technologies that we can have to make sure that we can have the good design of the different grids, that we have a good high voltage, low voltage system, that we have the big grids that we can make, district heating and so on, but also microgrids, very important, and the different also battery management systems, thermal systems and so on, where we can work on. So very important there, and we're also doing a lot of research and innovation that is also related to the secondary sectors there. It's more related to the mitigation, to the adaptation, sorry, where we're really looking also to air quality, looking to heating, looking also on how to combine the agricultural challenges that we have, and again, those the competition that we see between agriculture and the energy sector. And last but not least, it's also about impact on sustainable living. So we really want also, and it's also coming back what we're discussing today, on where we also can ensure that every individual and every person on Earth can also have access to those new ways of living, and also have access then to new energy systems. And I think it's really crucial, and it's also something at the European level, but even more, I think, and that's where we're today also in Africa, where we also can make sure that also the people that are living day to day and are still in a growing situation today, that everybody also still can continue to have access to and also have energy and also have access to that energy. And there's very important, I think, that we also combine the different forces that we have, and that we also can make sure that we can make more impact together. So that's a little bit the role that we see, and it was very well mentioned by Mr. Jacobs a little bit earlier today. We have to use the science by design, science and technology by design, but we have to go for a result by implementation. And I think it's really, if I want to take one quote for today, that would be my quote. So thank you very much for that. So coming back to the panel discussion, yeah, we all know, and we have been talking about it, that we have very big challenges ahead of us. We also know, it was also said by the minister factor that to reach the increase by temperature by 1.5 is getting very, very even unrealistic maybe. I would like to get your opinion on that. Where are we today on this transition? We know that every increase of 0.1 degrees will have also a big impact on the biodiversity, also on the different the crises that we can expect. So how do you see the pathway we're running today, and how do you see this evolution? Is it realistic, and where will we go in the coming years and decades?
Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, as you say, the challenge it is very huge, especially in energy, and this, of course, reflect on the climate change and all the commitments that the globally will do. And I think take example for clean cooking in Africa, where most of the population without access to the clean cooking, we are cutting every moment a trees to have for cooking, of course, to supply home by cooking fuels. So now we need really to have some innovation to have this solve this problem in the way that it is benefits the climate change and also meet the demand of the people. This is, I think, one of the issues that we think we need to work, and Africa is working on that energy or clean cooking for homes in Africa. The other thing, I think, most of the important things, the life is changed by people. And really we need to empower the people by the right skill to navigate the right way in terms of the energy transition. And this is what we Africa try to do. We did gap analysis for all 55 countries with all regions. We identify what the gap skills that need to have that transformation. And actually we try to supply training for all levels, not only for just middle class, for decision maker up to the technician, and for all technology, because we feel in Africa we need all technology in place. So we hope this program can reflect positively in that energy transition. And as I mentioned, due to this energy transition, there is a lot of decision need to be made, and this decision need to be made based on fact. And this is the reason in Africa we try to work together with all our member states to empower them to have to collect the right data, to have a credible data, so that they can make their decision for themselves, and also as a continental body, we can also support that decision as a continental level. And also the other thing, even we know that fossil fuel we need to phase out in some way, but we feel in Africa natural gas could be like our transition fuel. We need to use it for some times so that we can make sure that we can fill the gap in the energy access. And this not really deny our Africa commitment as a global commit for the climate change. And at the end, this energy transition, we need to plan it in the way that it is impact positively for our member state. And also we are working with the African Development Bank to have energy transition as like a continental framework for energy transition, and also support some country to develop their decarbonization path to navigate this energy transition. So really this is what we are trying to contribute from Africa side to achieve our continental commitment, and also to contribute to the global commitment.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe I can add there that we have a very good collaboration, I think, on the NDC support centers, where in 4 countries, in Uganda, Malawi, Mozambique, and Morocco, we are working very closely together with Africa to really put in place the NDC contributions and a very good data collection, and then also reporting way of working, where we really also try to then also build the capacities and enable and apply also the local governments and the local authorities, and together also with the national governments to really make sure also that people really understand what is at stake, and also then to get to, and to improve the quality of the data, and also in the future we want to take it a step further and to see also how we can make scenarios based on that, scenario planning, action plans, and also feedback loops, then to see how to improve year after year the different actions that have been taken in place. So I think it's a very nice example of how to do the collaboration, and also with also empowering different local authorities and local communities to be part of it. So that's very important. Mr. Chen Jilu.
Well, just to build on, I think what my colleague has mentioned, I think while international coalition, international partnership is very critical, but I think if we really want to reach those targets, I think we also have to be really individualized in terms of looking at each country's their own challenges, the development path, and build their NDCs based on the country's sort of challenge opportunity. And this is what we've been doing in this series of what we call Country Climate and Development Report. It's really looking at the intertwine between climate change and development, because every country, particularly low-income countries, are aspired to develop, to grow. And at the same time, they are most vulnerable to the climate change impact. But some of the development path that they're undertaking, if not addressed, if not taking the long-term development impact into consideration, could actually be at risk of their own development path, because they will be actually worsening the climate change impact. So that's the intertwine that we really want to highlight in this series of country climate and development report. We've done it for over 42 countries. We launched it about just over 2 years ago as part of our contribution to this debate. And I emphasize that it has to be country-specific, because I think every country is looking at this differently, because the different natural resources endowment, different stages of development. I'll give you one example. We just launched the one for Democratic Republic of Congo, and we pick up sort of 3 main features. I think they obviously set the NDC target, net zeros and carbon neutrals, but then we look at the key impact of these trajectories moving forward. One, we all know that DRC is one of the main source country for some of the critical minerals, like copper, like cobalt. Now, one good thing about DRC's economy in supporting this mineral is that the energy base is largely hydro. It depends a lot on hydro. However, the country still have a large population, many areas that are not connected. So for them, on the one hand, the opportunity is that because of its hydro-based energy sector, it makes the critical mineral extraction much more green. And this actually could be a supply of choice for people that actually want to embrace on a green supply chain. But to do that, they need to invest much more on their hydro capacities, develop many of the resources they have, so that they can provide the country with the support, with the energy, at the same time continue to support the mineral sectors. But that requires investments. Hydro investment is very expensive. Some of you work in that field, you probably heard of the Inga. It's been under discussion for decades, but it's still not yet really put into the ground, because for a variety of reasons. Some of them are concerning about whether they can manage such a large investment, but fundamentally it's also about how they can attract such an investment. We're talking about in the range of about $4 or $5 billion of investments, right? And that really requires both public MDB for like us, but also private sector investments. So putting institutions together, doing that's part of that kind of intersect between development and climate change. And another element in the case of DRC, again, the country specific in terms of the NDC target, is that they have a very large forest coverage. Now, this ecosystem depends on how you manage it. At the moment, they obviously provide. At the moment, they're providing a carbon sink function. But with the current rate of degradation of their forests, they will become actually not serving their function if they continue this path over the next 5 years, which is another element that we want to highlight in this so-called CCDR analysis. And we also want to basically build a case that DRC, if they can somehow preserve their forest coverage, they can actually benefit from the ecosystem benefit that we've been talking about. You know, the carbon trace and all that. We can actually put a value on X billion dollars that they can benefit from that. But again, that require country sort of regulation, policy, enforcement to really maintain that, but at the same time developing the market. So I think that intertwine between climate change and development is something that we really need to focus on, because every country has a different path in this pathway.
Absolutely. I think that everybody's agreeing on that, and I would like to ask the point of view of Mr. Van Wetter, because you're present in the different countries, so you also have a very country-specific approach. How do you see the development of the countries as such, on the one hand, and on the other hand, indeed, the contribution, let's say, also to the European goals on climate change, and how do you see a good balanced development in that way?
I think can you hear me? Yeah, the example of DRC is a good one, and I fully agree with you. And listening to you, I was thinking actually climate change, if you want to succeed, or energy transition, is all about governance at the end of the day. Inga, we know it's the solution to energy problems for the whole region, not only for Congo. The biosphere reserve of Congo is the second largest in the world. So Congo is a solution in a way for the whole region, and maybe for the world as well. And on the same time, large investments in Congo do not take place, and they do not take place largely due to governance issues. And so, yeah, I think then our approach makes sense. What we do at Enable, working on those governance issues. Actually, we have, in our strategy, we have 5 pillars. And the first one is peace and security. And we say there is no development without stability or security, and no stability without development. And you could argue the same with climate. There is no climate action without development, and conversely. The question when you ask, okay, where are we in the 1.5? I was a few weeks or a few months ago in a very interesting conference with Esther Duflo, the French economic Nobel Prize. And she had a very interesting reflection based on research. And basically, she says the countries the least responsible for climate change are the most affected by climate change, but also it's not only the most affected, no, but the most affected by a single increase of temperature. And she made in India research by showing how a 0.5 degree more in India impacts on the productivity of workers. And it's saddening to see those reports because they are evidence-based, but basically she shows clearly with data as evidence that the heat decreases the productivity of workers, and so the more they are affected by climate change, in a way the least they develop, because the workers are affected directly by that. And it makes me think of all those countries in sub-Saharan Africa that are the most affected by climate change, but actually climate change is decreasing their own ability to develop. And so there is a kind of vicious circle which is not acceptable in a way. And that's where, and to be frank with you, this is my worry here at the COP, because I see, on the one hand, I want to be optimistic because I see a lot of commitment, a lot of innovation, a lot of optimism that technology can be part of the solution. But on the other hand, I feel inequality in the way who will get access to that. And because finance increase, which is good, and to be frank with you, I think money is not the problem. The question is who accesses the money. And when you see here all the lobbying going on who can access the money, that's the issue. And I think here we, as the World Bank, African Union, VITO and Enable, we have a role to play to make sure that money flows goes to the right, not to the usual suspects, but to the one that really need it. That would be my reflection for.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good reflection, I think. And I think indeed that we can have very nice technology developments and so on, very big projects on the one hand, but also on the other hand, some smaller things that we also can put in place. We're really also working, it was mentioned, working together with a lot of organizations, also to the GSTIC working, where we bring together a lot of partners from the different continents, research organizations that are very independent and that bring together then the technology that exists from the different countries countries from the different continents, where we learn from each other and we bring it together also with the different stakeholders from private sector, from the financing sector, also from policymakers and so on, to see on how we can make the best potential leverage for the different kind of situations that's in there. But I do agree that we have to have a lot of attention on those local access and local capacity building as well, and to enable also these, let's say, maybe more minority groups also to be able also to access to this financing and so on. So if we can bring together the different voices here around the table to do that, I think it would be a very big step that we can take forward together. Maybe still your point of view on that one, because also from AFREC you're working on the different initiatives. What is you think is missing, or what can we do better to even have more impact as different partners together?
Yes, actually, when it comes to Africa, everything is urgent and everything is priority, of course. And people talk about capacity building, finance, and all this issue. But really, there are some elements, I feel that sometimes people, they miss it. We need also to enable Africa to be part of supply chain of renewable energy. We need to have a local manufacturing on this renewable energy. So now of course, we need to leapfrog for renewable energy. But imagine in Africa, I don't see any panel manufacturing facility in Africa, or most of this renewable energy equipment we need to be imported. And actually, this is not the sustainable measure, sustainable way. If we need to ensure that Africa, they leapfrog on renewable energy, we need to make sure we have a research, we need to have finance, we need to have a skill, but also we need to have a local manufacturing facility to support the African nation to leapfrog to more sustainable energy transition path. And I think this is the most important one. People put more emphasis on finance, on capacity, on something, but that area we need to be aware about. Even when we look about the green hydrogen, so green hydrogen, most of the narrative now, we need to bring technology in Africa to produce hydrogen and take it out, which is also not sustainable and is not even justified actually. So we need really to have to look for the local content in terms of the manufacturing, in terms of the technology, and in terms of really to have a local market for that new technology.
Yeah, completely agree, and I think we have some good examples there, also with the climate action programs that are also facilitated by the Flemish government and also by GSTIC, that we really try to bring together, like also indeed technology that exists with also local players and SMEs also from Belgium, and then also see how we can build up also the capacity in the African countries. And we have here at Turbulent, who is also doing and working in that way, not importing the different components, but really also putting in place local capacity to build up and manufacture also the installations in Africa. We have other examples also in the water infrastructure. And I think indeed it's very important to see, and then it's also going along with vocational training, also other education and so on, the financing for that, but really also to make sure that we also have own solutions for Africa. And that's maybe a next question, like, okay, what would be for you an ideal situation on how to make the combination of the own development? I'm coming back to that question for the African countries, and then also looking at, okay, what can we then export to Europe and how to find a good balance in there? What would be your first takeaway for you there?
Say it again?
So on what we need to do and how can we really also foster the local development and the country development that we say, and what is really needed for the own development on the one hand, and make sure that also local people have access to energy, and on the other hand, what is the good balance then to find also with the export that is also needed to create a win-win situation with Europe?
I think partnership, the right partnership. I think this is needed in all levels. So we need to have that partnership, and we need to value the local content. We need to value that we are dealing with a country that needs that energy. Of course, we need to contribute to the global energy supply chain, but also we need to at least to satisfy the local needs. And I think we cannot achieve that without partnership. Partnership in terms of the skills building, but partnership in terms of the financing, access to technology, manufacturing facility to be built in Africa. So partnership, I think, is the key word.
Yeah, if I can add on the local, can you hear me? I always have the feeling that it doesn't work. Local content, what I think should be done, and not enough done. I lived in China for 6 years, and Chinese, they were very good in joint ventures, as obliging a European investor to have less than 50% of the share. And Chinese were always majority shareholders in a joint venture, and they were requiring technology transfer. That's why Airbus is now building planes in China, but there are plenty of other examples. And I think in Africa, if you want to ensure local content, I come back to regulations with strong regulations that oblige, in a way, equitable joint ventures between a local firm and an investor, to make sure that this ownership is there, and at the same time there is a real technology transfer. Otherwise, it will always be seen as potentially grabbing of resources.
Is that a kind of mechanism that the World Bank also can put in place, or are you putting that in place because you're saying, okay, we need private investors and so on, but yeah?
I think it's a combination of many of these things. There's no one silver bullet that will solve all the problems. If you really focus on the energy sector, in the spring this year, we published a report called Scale Up to Phase Down. We're trying to describe what we call Voral Cycles on how to build energy security and energy efficiency and access and all that. You really have to start with a high-level political commitment, and then you build your institution, a good governance system, a good utility, prepare good projects that will attract financing to come in. And that will create that kind of a virtuous cycle that we want to see. Yes, I think all these elements about local contents, benefiting the local economy, those are all important. Every one of them. But again, you need a good regulatory system to enforce such a desire, right? So you start with a policy, and then you have an institute system to have capability to actually deliver such a setup. So I think we need to all work together, and working in every partner may have a different role to play in different sort of phase of this cycle. From us, yes, we provide financing, but as I keep saying, it's not just about financing. You also mentioned sometimes money is not the only problem. Yeah. Sometimes money is there. For example, we have project, but implementation is really slow, meaning that they're sitting on money they're not spending because they don't have the system in place to actually spend the money. So I think it's a combination of all these factors need to put in together.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that if I can summarize or conclude a little bit on the discussion, I think that we all agree, and it's maybe also something we should take along for the rest of this COP. It's really okay that we really need to partner more. I think that's one. That also, and that's very important, I think, a very good balance between financing and funding, and giving the good mechanisms also to make sure that there's local access for it, and that also all the people, so there's no one left behind. So that's also what the minister said, that we really find the mechanism for the big projects and the big infrastructures on the one hand, but on the other hand also looking at how can we ensure that also there's enough financing and enough attention also going to this local communities, and making sure that they all have access to the financing. And also I think it's very important also to see the connection between the different sectors and the different elements, and also making sure that we can measure things. And that's also what is also, I think, very much emphasized by you, that we also need to measure the different data that we have, that we can make a lot of models and also follow up on the different actions that we have. Maybe a last comment on this, or do you want to add something?
Really, first of all, thank you for this invitation, and I think the discussion is for Africa energy transition is going to increase, but the key words now, we are talking about the future where skill that we need may not necessarily is the same skill that we know now. Finance, we need to have favorable finance for energy sector in Africa. And of course, we need to have research and innovations to enable the African nation to have the right path for energy transition.
Thank you.
Just to say thank you for this opportunity to share with you some of our thinking and what we're doing at the World Bank. Look forward to other opportunity of partnership. We're really close by. Our pavilion is next door, actually.
Okay, perfect.
And there will be a lot of sessions there. You can also hear what are we doing.
Before I ask the public if they have questions, you want to add something, Simon?
Yeah, maybe the reflection for me is that development cooperation is no longer the monopoly, I would say, of the World Bank or organization like mine, but everybody has to play a role because we need to reinvent our world. That's what I see with the challenge we are ahead of us. And to reinvent our world, we cannot do the same way as we did before. It's like the famous sentence of Einstein, you don't solve the problem of the solutions of tomorrow with the same way you did it in the past. And for that, I think African youth has a role to play because you have a young population that can shape the future, and I think finding ways to involve them more in the global governance would be good, because the global governance system is still dominated by organizations that were created 70, 80 years ago, and I think we need to reinvent this global governance system. That's what I think.
Okay, thank you. Are there some questions from the public? Yes.
Thank you very much. My question is for Vice President, Mr. Guangzhe Chen. I am John Salah. I am from the private sector from the Pacific Island nation of Samoa. Presently, my company has a renewable energy proposal currently evaluated by the Energy Council of our country, technology, due diligence, environmental impact. It is wind power plus BESS. Our WTG would be investors. Our BESS would be MTU Rolls-Royce. The overall project proposal would be valued at 180 US million as of October last year. We haven't done an upgraded costing yet. My question is, how would the World Bank play a role as number one? Maybe if we have, it's a fully funded project, we have some investors on board, but of course the owners are finding more investors to share the risk is up to us as a company. How would the World Bank participate as an investor, and or are there any other financial options for a private company like ourselves to achieve from the World Bank? Noting that, as Mr. Water did say, countries with the least emissions are affected the most, and also these also very much limit our progress, our development. Our project, when it's online about 36 months from today, if it is endorsed and implemented by the government of Samoa, it will offset up to 80 to 90% of the current diesel. Thank you very much.
I'm going to give just a very quick response because this is very project specific. First of all, I encourage you to look at on our website the work that we've been doing in Maldives. We've been supporting Maldives to transition because they face the same challenge as you. Their energy system is based on import diesel. So they've been massively expanding solar energies. Now they're gradually looking at wind options to replace diesel-based system. For us, this is a long-term, it's a long journey. We started working with them some 15 years ago. At that time, unit cost of solar investment in Maldives was very expensive. We use obviously auctions. So we provide concessional finance in the first fund and then attract the other investments, because ultimately public finance is limited because our loan to the government is becoming debt. So they may not be able to sustain that level of debt. So to answer your question, similar structures, you can approach our International Finance Corporation, which provide private sector financing for this type of project. If the government wants to think that they need a sovereign-based lending, concessional lending, they can also approach the World Bank through our country management office in the country. We have a country representative, they can approach that. But they may not want to do that because this is a sector that can actually attract private sector investments. We also have guarantee instruments to actually de-risk some of those perceived risks that are for private sector on non-payment guarantee, etc. So they can attract private investment into a country like yours.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, another question here.
Thank you very much. I'm Walter Buidens from the company Turbulent Micro Hydro. This morning I saw a new acronym explanation for MDB, Multilateral Development Banks. I saw Make Development Better. I think
Okay,
that's a very nice one. So my question is, how can you encourage or facilitate the input of Belgian SMEs, so small companies, which are innovative and technologically oriented, as a leverage to empower African SMEs, partners in the energy transition. For instance, local manufacturing, which we try to find out, local employment and local GVs. We don't need loads of money, and that's sometimes our problem. I mean, it's easier for the MDBs to give millions, plenty of millions, and we only need a few hundred thousands.
That's a nice question, I think.
Okay, to answer your question, I would say that fundamentally we want to support the country to create that kind of inducive investment environment so that SME, domestic SMEs or international SME can come in. It's not our job to say support any particular SME to invest in country X or country Y. That's not our role. Our role is to actually work with our country governments to create that environment to make it easier. So I think that's how I have been always approach to do that.
If I can add, I think the question is excellent. I would speak with an enable hat, but also from my knowledge in development. I've been 15 years on the field, and my last assignment was in Tanzania, where I work with Tanzanian SMEs. And indeed, there is a funding gap, which what I call the missing middle, because you have the DFI, the Development Finance Institutions, or the MDBs. Everybody wants a large project because a large project is easier to manage. You have less stakeholders. Administratively, it's easier. And at the same time, you have plenty of SMEs who look for small funding. The banking sector doesn't come to those because it's too risky in the countries where you are. And then it's even more risky in more riskier countries. So I come back to Mali, Niger, and then they never get those projects. So I think there we need to build something, and to be frank with you, at Enable, something we want to do is to build a kind of funding facility for this kind of project that are not funded by the development finance institutions. Because even in Belgium we have BO, and BO has a smaller ticket, but the smaller ticket is still €1 million. So you are not at what you say 100,000, between 100,000 and 500,000. You don't have a lot of vehicles, and I think there is something to be developed between the banks and development agencies.
Just maybe 1 minute to add to that. We do in some countries, if as part of that support of the investment environment, we do actually support the country to develop. We call it a financial intermediate. We work through, let's say, a development bank of Ethiopia to create such a facility managed by Ethiopian Development Bank, to provide this kind of a small size loan to SMEs. Because for us, it's just not possible for us to manage this large number, right? So we work through a financial intermediate. We help them to build regulation policies and creating a competition policies. And sometimes they may put a restriction about access of such a small size loan to only domestic. Then you probably need to find a way to form joint venture with the domestic company to be able to access to this kind of a facility. But we do that in many of the low-income countries.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. You also wanted to put a question.
Thank you, and thank you. It was great listening to you. My name is Niklas Halberg. I'm the climate lead at UNEP, based in Nairobi. In our experience, there is actually quite a bit of money for investment into energy projects in that 100 to 300 megawatt scale. But where the bottleneck comes in with state-owned utilities. Mm-hmm. So it would be interesting to hear if any of your organizations are working on the reform of state-owned utilities so that they A, can match the demand with the supply, and B, and this is most important, that they can pay for the power.
Yeah.
because a lot of them are running at loss and they don't have the cash to pay for it. So there's an issue with getting the money from the consumers to the producers of the power. So any work on utility reform?
We have utility turnaround programs in Sub-Saharan Africa region for at least a decade now. This is fundamental. I think in my opening remark, I make that point. For Africa region to really fill this access gap, they need to attract, we estimated, 2/3 of the investment has come from the private sector. But no private sector is going to invest in a utility that cannot recover their operating and maintenance costs. There are many factors of that. Some of them could be tariff, some of them could be system loss, some of them could be just a bad governance system, not able to collect bills, etc. Right? So we've been working with many countries to address this issue, but I have to be honest, the progress is not as fast as we like to see. And some of them is at macro level, some of them, politically impossible to raise tariff for some area. Some of them is just because the generation cost is too high. So again, it has to be country specific, look at different elements, and we use project to actually, all our project will actually, we have this as a challenge, we have to address that particular challenge across countries.
And also as a research organization, we can also contribute to that. We're doing a lot of scenario building as well on how to go there, what are the different markets we need to create, how to balance the demand and the supply, and also look at pricing mechanisms. So these are also elements that we also can contribute also to see how we can also make changes, policies and so on. But it's true that it remains a quick challenge, I think.
But actually, maybe I can add here, the situation in Kenya maybe is better than other countries in Africa. They have regulators, they have some law, something like this. But you can find in some countries that depend on fossil fuel by more than 70%, which means the cost of the generation is very high. Cost-reflective tariff sometimes is not easy to set, and there are some social aspects to even transform the utility. And I think the era of renewable energy, and if we can manage to have a favorable finance mechanism for renewable energy, could be even the solution for some African country to transform their electricity sectors, which I think it could be possible. Because I think in some countries the cost of kilowatt hour more than 200% from the others, and this is the reason because they depend on fossil fuel, and most of this fossil fuel is imported. So with renewable energy, mini grid or something, maybe this could be a good chance for transforming energy supply system in Africa.
Okay, thank you. A last question from somebody. I see that we're running a bit out of time, so I would like to thank, I think I see you also looking, and I also have to catch my plane. So thank you very much to all of you. I think it was a very interesting debate. Very happy to continue the good collaboration together, and let's move forward and to make the transition happen to a new balance. We don't know where it will end, but I'm sure we'll find the solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.